So welcome everyone to the Institute. It's a beautiful night tonight. Oh, I couldn't have asked for anything more. My name is Ellen Holstein. I'm a community program manager here at Pierce Cedar Creek Institute. I recognize quite a few of you, but not all of you. So welcome. Tonight we're doing geocaching. So we're going to just talk about the basics of geocaching. Well, what is geocaching? Lots of people like to say it's the world's largest treasure hunting game, which it is worldwide, so it is kind of like that. So players use the geocaching app or a GPS unit, so you do not need a smartphone to do geocaching. That's one of those things where people are like, I need all this technology. You can use your smartphone. That's the nice part about this, but you can also use a GPS unit. And you use those to find cleverly hidden containers. And we'll go over what that means in just a minute. There are over 3 million containers hidden all over the world, and that's always increasing. I just hid another 5 here at the Institute this last week, so it is increasing. So the history of geocaching, if you did not know, I was looking this up recently. GPS, that actual technology wasn't developed until the 70s. So it wasn't until the 80s that really GPS units became more available to people. And it wasn't until 2001, I believe, 2001 or 2000, that David Elmer hid the world's first geocache in Oregon. And he basically said, take some stuff, leave some stuff. That's what he was doing. And one of the first things that he actually left was an old can of beans. Unfortunately, that geocache is no longer in existence. A lawnmower got to it, but the beans did survive. So that is the first geocache. Since then, it's become worldwide. And this month actually is World Geocaching Day. So the 20th on Saturday is when you celebrate World Geocaching Day. So if we don't find all the geocaches tonight, I'd say come back on Saturday. So what sizes are we thinking about when we're thinking about geocaches? So you can have a very micro size, so a really small size. You could have what they call a small size. So thinking about it in terms of like a small Tupperware type container. You could have what they call a regular size. So these are decon boxes, decontamination boxes, basically. So this would be more of like a regular size loaf of bread. Think of that. Large, you can get really, really large sometimes. But on the other hand, you could have that other category. So you might notice sometimes there's an other category. And what they mean by other, it could be a nano, so something even smaller than a micro. So it could look like, for example, a bolt. It could look like a bolt on a sign. It could look like other things. And those other things, it could be on the bottom of a rock. This is one that I found up in the northern part of the Lower Peninsula. It's just a fake rock over this container back here, and this is my son's legs right there. So that gives you some perspective. It could look like a utility box. That's a little tricky. Not my favorite. It could look like a bird house or a bat house. I personally don't appreciate those as much because I don't want to disturb if it's a real bird house or a real bat house, but it is cleverly hidden, right? As I said, bolts are sometimes fake logs. There's lots of different things out there, different ways to hide the geocaches of different sizes. Oh, so yes, another one is a fake acorn. Oh, so another option is, I guess, a chewed piece of gum. I have also seen something that looks like cow plop. So there are many different ways. They say sometimes it's the last place you think it would be is sometimes where the geocache is. So what's inside a geocache? Well, if it's the nano one or the really, really small one, usually all that's in there is a logbook, something that you would sign, so a little piece of paper. And sometimes you need to bring your own pencil because there's not even room for a pencil. But other things that could be in there, a lot of times there is a logbook. So something that you're going to write your name on, or I usually write my code name because my whole family, we geocache together. So we have a code name for our family. There also might be things like different tradable things, because if you remember that very first geocache, it was leave something, take something. And so there's things to leave and take. And I know for some people, that's the best part of it. Yeah, we'll see. There's also things called trackables, and we'll go over what a trackable is in just a minute. But there's lots of different things that could be in a geocache. It really depends on the size of the geocache and how much could actually be put in it. And if you have one of these, you can stuff quite a bit in that. But if you have those micro ones or those nano ones, there's probably not going to be a lot in that geocache. So there's different types of geocaches. So if you go to the geocaching app, and it's geocaching.com online on the internet, but if you just go into your app store, it's just geocaching is the app name. So there's traditional geocaches, which is that green symbol right there. And these just basically, it's a container, and they actually give you the coordinates to the container, the actual GPS coordinates. This is probably one of the simplest ones to do. This is, if you're starting out, this is where I would say start off here. There's also mystery or puzzle caches. So these are ones that may include a puzzle that you need to solve in order to find the coordinates, to find the actual geocache. So they're not just going to give you the coordinates. They're not going to say this is where it is. They're going to say you have to figure out what this puzzle is, and then you can figure out where it is. So it's a little different in that. There are multi-caches where you actually have to go to multiple places. So they may give you the coordinates to the first location and may say, maybe you need to figure out how many E's are on this sign or how many T's are on this sign or stuff like that to actually figure out a coordinates. And from those coordinates, you have to go to another place and find something. So you're going multiple places before you get to the actual cache in the end. Earth caches, as an educator, is one of my favorite. An earth cache is basically more an educational opportunity. So it's where a potential geological thing is really cool. So like an esker, which we have on our property, or Kettle Lake, or something that's really cool out in nature, where you can visit this unique feature on the earth and learn about it. And there's also usually some worksheets or something to go with it. So those are a newer one. And we have talked a little bit about letterboxing. So letterboxing is like predates geocaching. Before there was geocaching, there was something called letterboxing. So it's another form of treasure hunting that uses more clues to find the coordinates. And so sometimes people not only do geocaching, but they kind of mix the two. And usually you get a stamp instead of signing the logbook. So that's kind of the distinction there. All right, so how do you begin your geocaching adventure? So if you've got a smartphone, and if you don't, that's okay. And where did I put my smartphone? In this bucket, of course. So if you've got a smartphone, you want to create an account. It's a free account for just the basic membership with geocaching.com. You need a username and a password. That's all you need to start off. So you create that account. As I said, you can do it through the app. You can also do it online. And then you find a geocache in your area. You figure out where you are, where are some geocaches near you. There are two different types of accounts. So there's the basic account, which is the free one. There's also a premium account, which is $30 for the year. That will give you access to even more geocaches. So they have premium geocaches, which unfortunately some of the Institute ones they made premium. We'll be fixing that because I want them all to be basic so everyone can see it. But the great thing about the app is that it helps you navigate to those locations. So how does it do it? So when you go into the app, this is what the little symbol for geocaching is. It'll give you a map if you have your location services on. So this does take your location services. It will take some data. It will take some of that battery life sometimes on our phones. But if you find a geocache you want, you click on it. And then you can hit this navigate button. And if you click on that navigate button, it'll tell you about how close is it. So it'll show you where you are and about the most direct route to that geocache. Now, sometimes the most direct route might be through a house. It might be through a really dense forest. So you might have to circumvent that most direct route. But it will show you the most direct route and about how far you are. So it also shows you the accuracy at that point of your GPS unit. So you may be, if you're in a nice open area, it may say you're within plus or minus 16 feet of the geocache when you get really close. If you're in a really forested area or where you have a lot of stuff that's blocking you and those satellites that are giving you all those wonderful GPS coordinates, it may not be as accurate. I've seen it 33 feet, it's a bigger area basically. Because as I said, it does use GPS coordinates, so that latitude, longitude. And you do need to pay attention if you're not using the app to what coordinates you're actually using. So the geocaching app uses coordinates, and you can see some of these coordinates down here. They use particular ones. So they use something called degrees and decimal minutes. Basically, it's just different than what other apps use, is the main point I'm trying to make. So they use degrees, decimal minutes. Google Maps might use degrees, minutes, seconds. decimal degrees. I have a compass on my phone, and that actually uses degrees, minutes, and seconds. And so just pay attention to what that actually looks like. So for example, degrees, decimal, minutes, it has a degree symbol, and then it's got a decimal, and then it's got this little like tick mark right by it. All right, so that's your degrees, decimal, minutes. Whereas your degree, minutes, seconds, it's got that degree, it's got a little tick, and then it's got 2 quotes. All right, so those would be your seconds. Whereas decimal degrees, it's just got a number with a point and a degree at the end. So those are your differences that if you aren't using the app, you just need to pay attention, because I've done it where I've gone to a mystery cache or a multi-cache. They gave me the coordinates, and the coordinates they gave me didn't line up with the coordinates in the geocaching app, and I was searching all over. Basically, I figured out it was not working out. So just pay attention to that if you're not using the app. The other thing the app does give you, as well as the website, difficulty and terrain. So it tells you how difficult it is to find it. So maybe it's going to take you, most people, about 10 minutes to find it. Maybe it'll take most people about 30 minutes to find it. That would be a more difficult one. It also tells you what the terrain looks like. So how hard is it to actually get to? So difficulty. If it's out in the open like this, pretty easy, right? But if it's hidden with a code, that's going to be a lot harder. For terrain, well, if I'm inside the city, maybe it's a lot easier, a lot flatter. Am I hiking or climbing up something? That's going to be a lot more difficult. So that's where you're going to want to look at that difficulty in the terrain and what you're up for. All right, so I found a geocache that I want to actually do. Now what? So I found that geocache. Inside, you're going to have a logbook. All right, remember I talked about the logbook, and they come in many different shapes and sizes. That's kind of one of the fun things about the geocache. You can log it on the logbook. You can also share your experience on the app. So you can say, I found it. You can say, this was a great find. Thank you for doing this. You can say, oh, well, it wasn't actually there. So give feedback also to the person who hid it. You may also notice this one says didn't find it, DNF. Here's so many months and I found it, out, going around, found it. You can also put a photo up if you want, so kind of interacting with other people, but don't spoil the fun for someone else and say, it's hidden under this place, because that spoils it for someone else. So some lingo. This is stuff that I was like, when I first started geocaching, I had no idea what they were talking about. FTF, first to find. So I have geocaches out right now that if you get there first, you'll be the FTF, the first to find, because those just got published at 5 o'clock today. TFTC, thanks for the cache. This is like, I swear, texting, which I'm never good at as well. BYOP, bring your own pen or pencil, because remember, some of those nanos are really, really small. DNF, did not find. LN, left nothing, so didn't have space to maybe leave something in those nanos or those micros. CITO, cash in, trash out. So you go in, but you need to bring your trash out. And muggles, this is the fun one. Anybody love Harry Potter? You know, some of you maybe. So muggles in the sense of geocaching are non-geocachers. Okay, so just like in the wizarding world for Harry Potter, they're non-wizards. In geocaching, it basically means people that don't geocache. So if a geocache has been muggled, it basically means that somebody that wasn't a geocacher found it and maybe either removed it or something happened to it. So it was somehow taken away. And people sometimes will take geocaches away, not realizing what it is and what's going on, or that they don't necessarily want to geocache on their property. And so those are just some of the terms you may encounter if you read some of the notes. All right, take some, leave something. For my 7-year-old son, this is the best part ever. He will actually, he likes what they call the swag. So it's stuff we all get, right? Swag, stuff we all get. So these are items that are usually small toys, knickknacks, other treasures that people leave in the geocache, remember? Take something, leave something. So it's meant to be traded. So maybe you have an old slinky that you don't really use as much anymore, or you have a really cool stamp that you want to leave. So you could put that in, and maybe you found instead a really cool Hot Wheels car. And so maybe you do that trade. Trackables are different than swag. So trackables are basically something that has a unique code on it. And My thing doesn't want to work anymore, but it does have a unique code engraved on it. And these move from location to location. They're meant to travel throughout. So somebody's tracking where things went. So you want to make sure you note where that trackable goes if you do take a trackable, okay? Put it back. So if you do find a geocache, make sure you put it back exactly where you found it. Now you may think you have a better hiding spot, but you want to put it back exactly where you found it and exactly how you found it. So if it was hidden over by a piece of wood, you want to put that piece of wood back so the next person has a really good experience as well. Okay. All right, so our top tips for geocaching. When you are finding it with a geocaching app with your GPS unit, as soon as you get to about 30 feet, so remember sometimes it's 33, 16 depending, you just want to put that app away. You want to put that phone away because at this point you want to use your eyes. Look around, see what's maybe out of place. That app, those numbers are going to jump around all over when you get really, really close. So you want to start just looking around. Look for something that seems out of place, especially if it's one of those that's disguised as something else. Why is that bird box here? It doesn't look like it's used the way it should be. Look high and look low. Sometimes they hide them underneath things or in things. Other tips. Think like a detective. Sometimes they are disguised like other things, such as rocks or houses or everyday objects. Think outside the cache box, okay? They are never buried. So this is something that's important. I was talking to someone about geocaches at one point, and she's like, oh, it's like buried treasure. I'm like, it's like treasure, but not buried. So geocaches are never buried. You can always remove something. So maybe a log was on it, but you're never going to need that shovel to dig it out. All right, so that's really important. If you can't find a geocache, so this is something that I do quite frequently if I'm getting frustrated, look at the log, see if someone has found it recently. Look at the hint. There's usually a hint that somebody will leave to give you an idea of where it might be. They might say, look up. They might say near the log or something like that. Those might help you direct you of where to look. Looking at recent photos is also potentially a good thing, but I don't tend to see a lot of photos when I'm looking in the descriptions. So these are what some of the hints might be. So this is just a hint. So magnetic. So a hint of magnetic makes me think, oh, where is something that's metal that this actually might be? This would just one inside. And so those hints. This is also, let's see, flashlight is required. Bring BYOP, bring your own pen or pencil, so you know it's probably going to be a small one. Another tip, be stealthy around muggles, all right? Remember, muggles are non-geocachers. Sometimes people that don't really realize what's going on, they might just take it, not realizing that this is part of the bigger thing. And so if it's in a very congested, crowded area, you might have to wait a few minutes before you actually get that geocache that you think you know is in a particular spot. Always bring a pen or pencil, just in case, because sometimes maybe that pencil broke that's actually in the geocache, or sometimes that pen won't work. So always just bring one with you if you have it. And respect your surroundings. So always cache in, trash out. And the other things to bring while geocaching, well, if you have extra batteries or your charger, you know, for example, my phone is a really old phone. I bring an extra charger with me that will help because it'll drain my battery pretty quickly. Snacks and water anytime you go out, right? Sunscreen, bug spray, rain gear, flashlight, first aid kit, swag for trading, pen or pencil. Some people like to say bringing tools of the trade. I feel like this is for high level geocaching. So tools of the trade, pen lights, check, mirror, check, magnet, clampy thing, pocket knife. I've never had to use any of those, but I also don't go too far into that geocaching. So, but the good thing about it is the things that you take geocaching are similar to the things that they say to take while you go hiking. So if you're going more, for example, at the Institute and hiking about, those are things you should probably already take anyway. So it usually does. So they will give you a size. They'll say it's micro, small, regular. So this was asking on if it'll mention if it's a micro. So micro, a small, regular, or large are the sizes. And then other was the other category. So if something's a little unusual, they'll give you that size. And that's actually a really good indicator on, I sometimes avoid micros, especially in a forest, because it's like needles in a haystack. it's hard for me to find. I never was good at the Easter egg hunts when I was a kid. Let's put it that way. Any other questions? Thank you for joining us for Zoom, and come on out to geocaching. So